like to wish a very good morning to everyone. I hope you're all doing very well today. As I look out into the room, I want to ask you all this question. I would like all of you to think back to when you played sport. Imagine you are just weeks away from competing at the Olympics and your dream is about to come true. When someone approaches you with an offer to influence your performance, how confident are you that you'd recognize it? Or would you know what to do right in that moment? This brings us to the point of our presentation today. As a concentrated focus of the IOC's Olympic Movement Unit for the Prevention of Competition Manipulation, and more precisely on its educational work under Pillar 2. This is where prevention is not just about rules, it's about education, preparing athletes and their support systems to recognize manipulation before it's too late. Now, our project focused on 3 key end user groups: athletes, coaches, and referees. We wanted to understand how effective the current educational efforts really are and where they fall short. To do this, we examined existing content, e-learning modules, infographics, videos, and awareness campaigns. But content doesn't tell the whole story. So we engaged directly with the people at the heart of the Olympic movement. Our research combined a systematic literature review with interviews, surveys, and focus groups. This approach allowed us not only to map current strategies and identify gaps, but also to develop practical recommendations. In short, our scope was both the materials themselves and the stakeholders who depend on them. Now, when I first started conducting the interviews, I thought I'd hear simple perspectives. But after the interviews were finished, myself and my team, we realized how massive and complex this issue really is. Our first 2 research questions were rooted in the literature review. They asked, do current IOC educational materials emphasize? And how do risks of manipulation differ across sports? This review gave us a clear picture what exists, where strengths lie, and where critical gaps remain. It also showed that risks are widely across sports, making a one-size-fits-all approach ineffective. Now, research question 1 and 2, that gave us our map, but a map will only take us so far. Through our research question 3 through 5, we stepped into the real world, listening directly to stakeholders on the ground to understand how those tools are experienced. Through our interviews, surveys, and focus groups, we heard directly what their perspectives really are and heard what written reports could not. Whether the content resonates, it's memorable, and equips them to the act in the movement. What we discovered is that while materials are professional, they often lacked interactivity and emotional connection, 2 elements that are essential for retention in the movement. Now, looking at a broader level, our methodology was designed to connect these 2 layers, theory and practice. On one side, we looked at the structured academic content that currently exists. On the other, we engaged with real-world voices and those who interact with it every day. And while I'll leave the detailed methods to my colleagues in just a moment, what's important to note here is that the structure gave us a strong foundation to move from research question into findings, and ultimately into practical recommendations.
Okay, thank you, Kenan, for giving us a structure of the roadmap of our project. And here I would dive into more with the literature review that we took 3 weeks at the beginning of our project. And we get the better knowledge of what is PMC about, and also have the overall understanding of the existing material, what is the existing level. And actually, it is one of the most important steps in our project. It is because the content existing materials, there are different styles, diverse styles coming from both the open resources and also the official websites. So our team comprehensively reviewed the existing materials from 27 sources, and we put it into the 5 dimensions as shown on the slides. we get to know that the PMC is not, it's very important. Could happen at any time, anywhere, without paying much attention to that. So it is very important to educate all the stakeholders, not only the athletes, but also the coaches, the referees, the team officials, and also their athletes' entourage. So overall, the history of PMC has 9 years, and it is ongoing at a good pace with solid internal structuralizing and also the external benchmarking. And on the right of the slide, we put all our existing materials into a hierarchy model with 4 levels. And we found out that there is limited interactivity or user emotional engagement in most of the materials, which suggests we need more level for the interaction content required to all the end users. And to design more immersive interfaces that encourage more physical interaction with all the stakeholders will also help with the convenience and effectiveness of the engagement. And after mapping of all those existing materials, we asked ourselves, how could those extensive and diversified materials reach out to all the end users? So we try to look for the expertise and try to structure our project. Since looking externally, the education of anti-doping has been leading in the sports put into high importance, and the regulator WADA and its non-for-profit testing agency ITA has been leading in this field for education. So we did interviewed with senior education manager at ITA and the head of research and policy at WADA. That throughout the interview, the key takeaway that they mentioned for many times is that first, the pedagogical approach in design of the education materials, and second, the structured learning platform and the customized materials, which highlighting the importance of the approach and the content in education. And after that, our interview with the education and culture senior manager at FISU helped us with a clear idea on how to further design on our future research with the interview focus groups. We discussed about the criteria of choosing the interviewees and also how to design the questionnaires to maximize the effectiveness of our project. And to wrap up all the insights and all the inputs, then we come to an interview plan with all the focus groups, which will bring us to a more concrete info and to meet their direct needs. Here, I would invite my teammate Suwan to better elaborate it.
Following the literature review and expert interview, we designed the focus group interview, focusing 2 areas. First, how to define the domain of interview question. Second, what we expect to extract from these questions. To ensure the quality of our interview data, we established 2 dimensions: how people are aware and perceive the effectiveness of the IOC's current content. The next one is to discuss their future suggestions based on their personal experience. Accordingly, we prepared 4 main questions and 12 follow-up questions for the focus group interviews. Then we invited 3 different groups of participants: representative from IF, representative from NOCs, and the ambassador groups of the 2024 Paris Philippines Sport. By listening to their real-world experience, we expect to have diverse insight aligned with our objective of our project scope. In order to have meaningful interview data, we followed the 6 systematic academic steps of data analysis, from data collection, including pre-survey, focus group interview, to identification of key findings. The pre-survey was designed to capture participants' previous experience with the IOC's PMC content. Then results showed that they overall perceived it positively. Then we also conducted text mining analysis to identify the recurring word during the interview. Then we validated the relevance between interview context and research context. By categorizing all the data throughout the whole data process, we identified 5 core domains, 14 main themes, and 78 sub-themes. And we also tried to translate all findings into practical ideas for the real-world applications. For today's presentation, we are not explaining every single themes, but we are focusing on several key takeaways. First, summarizing challenges, we identified 2 areas: content-based matter and cultural ethical matter. Regarding content, participants emphasized the strong need for regular content update, having more engaging factors and real-world cases. They also remarked there's need for the development of the verification system, which is to check if the end user is really watching or learning from content or just clicking the play button or next button. Also, there is a range of language barriers still limited. In the perspective of a cultural ethical side, we are all different. The individuals from different countries have diverse social and cultural norms that lead to the different level of understanding and awareness on PMC topics. Also, participants pointed out there is still limited number of awareness from individuals about the PMC topic and IOC's own platform. Also, this kind of ethical awareness, the lower level of ethical awareness, making everything into one framework. On the other hand, we were able to get the constructive feedback, practical suggestions, and inspiring ideas from them. First, the tailored content should be created according to the diverse stakeholder roles, as coaches, referees, and youth athletes all approach PMC content and topic with a different level of understanding. They also remarked adding more personal stories and real-world examples with the peer-to-peer communication in the delivery process. Some people proposed establishing a centralized digital library that consolidates all materials, making people more accessible and manageable. Another key issue was to leverage social media engagement more proactively, maximizing the role of ambassadors. Finally, one of the key points highlighted during the interview was the importance of local and cultural relevance. Since we are all different and we face all different issues, the tailored approach are essential to effectively convince end users.
So it took us 2 months after the qualitative research findings to come up with the recommendation. But since we know you got our client in December, we start to think about creative ideas on how to enhance PMC material. Here we can see that in overall of all the strategies, the main important thing is the communication. So having appropriate and tailored prevention strategies for each end users will help retain the prevention material from the end users. They all have different ethical background, all different contexts, ethical challenges. So this is why tailoring the material is the most important. What we want to leave you with today is having a roadmap with all the strategic recommendations, but it's also now the unit job to analyze each of those key strategic recommendations to then have the real implementation plan. We divide the recommendation into 3 pillars. If we take the first pillar, it would be academically how to have a strong pedagogical approach, exemplified earlier with the hierarchy model or the Bloom taxonomy mentioned earlier. It would help the OMPC unit to have a concrete background with like educational theory and sport governance foundation that you could even use to implement further in other IOC departments. In an ideal world, that would be amazing if all the departments with communication, prevention, education at IOC are following one single pedagogical approach. And the next thing would be more using a digital library. I said earlier by Suwan, having this centralized resources with all the material like toolkits or sport-specific cases, it would help the end users, so a federation or a region, to have the material easy accessible and up to date. We recommend this discussing with the participant. You can see on the bottom of the slide, this is the participant actual comments, that they recommend like every 2 or 3 years, this material need to be updated. In addition, today we all have smartphone in our hands. We all have social media. So following digital trends, for example, Instagram, TikTok, that could be used not only as informing, educating, but also as reporting mechanism, creating a behavioral change towards more integrity. Next, we do have the final product of this presentation. We have used the hands-on fact sheet. This is a tool for internal use only as for the IOC, and it's categorizing the same categories that we use for categorizing the interview participants. So if we take, for example, the by region, the African American, and taking grassroots program local hero. I'm gonna just explain you how we made the thinking process to end up with this recommendation. We had a discussion with the Paris and Sport ambassador Mitwa, and he was amazing, and he shared so much. He shared how he got caught himself into competition manipulation. He shared what does it mean for him to share this story with the people and how the people are perceiving his story. We compare this with the literature research or some other educational document, for example, the UN education program for low-income country. And by combining those, we end up with this recommendation that to target that kind of community, the best is to use grassroots program and local hero because they can identify to the problematic. So each of those recommendations were done with the same thinking process. To conclude this presentation, or I can even say this project, overall, the current material, the existing material is seen positively by the end users. However, there is room for improvements, both its delivery and its impact. So from translating the user's feedback into strategic recommendation, it would help have further engagement and also to prevent better competition manipulation. Moving towards what we recommend you is to really have recurring audit mechanism and have a living fact sheet that the end user can better use. All the findings that we had were really aligned with the agenda, having cultural resonance and really content format, learning format. Well, first I would like to thank you and the overall PMC unit, but especially you, Lauren Rida, for your trust, your time, and your expertise. I would like to thank you, Cedric, as well, for his academic guidance and also how to navigate the Olympic movement code of conduct, I would say. In addition to all participants and interviewee, see here, that they shared with us their expertise, their personal story, almost sometimes with emotion. It really helped us to dig deeper, and I can even call them like local hero, ground hero, because this is just, without them, we cannot change anything. And they all wanted to share this with us for the sake of a bigger purpose, prevention of competition manipulation. Thank you, Jared, for your attention. We are now opening questions. Thank you.